Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. My name is Shantae Williams, and I am the Vice President of People and Culture at Orion Talent, and I will be your moderator for today. Before I introduce you to our four incredible panelists, I want to tell you a bit about myself, my role at Orion Talent, and my passion for our topic, DEI. For those who know me, know that I am a huge advocate for DEI in the workplace and have made that one of my areas of focus at Orion. As the VP of P&C, I have the ability to influence and support our journey. I truly believe that employees are the most important aspect of an organization, and that allowing employees the ability to bring their authentic self to work, even if it is remote, drives a culture of engagement, excitement, and passion, which in the end adds to the growth and success of an organization. And I have had the pleasure of launching our DE&I or diversity journey in ERGs, but our awesome employees have been driving it with such passion. It didn't come without its challenges, and that's why I am beyond excited to be the moderator for this topic. Now, on to our four panelists. We have a big crowd today and some real heavy hitters in this space, and I am so excited for you to get to know each of them. So let's start with Carissa. Carissa Delk is the Director of Logistics for Catalent Pharma Solutions. Carissa, we are so glad to have you join today. Would you mind sharing just a bit about yourself and your work, and also tell our audience today what first inspired you to get involved in DEI and/or ERGs at Catalent?
Well, what a welcome there. Thank you, Shantae. That's a great intro. Yes, I'm very excited about ERGs. You can tell by my excitement and trying to jump in there, but yeah, I'm excited to be here. Currently, I am the Director of Logistics at Catalent for our Bloomington facility. My first experience with D&I groups was right when I exited active duty almost 12 years ago now. And really jumped in when was given the opportunity to actually launch a few. That was a company initiative at that time. So very excited to talk about my experience today, and happy to be here.
Great, thank you so much. And our second panelist is Julia Levy. She has actually been a huge help to Orion Talent as we have been working to build our ERGs here. Julia is the head of global talent acquisition at CommScope. Thank you for coming back again. Could you also share a bit about yourself, your work, and what inspired you to get involved in DEI and ERGs at CommScope?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I've been at CommScope about 3.5 years now. And when I first started, CommScope was just made an acquisition of another large company, and bringing the two together. I'm now part of our diversity business network. I'm on the leadership council for that, and the executive sponsor of our young careers group called Rise. But I've been involved, I think, as leading talent acquisition. My role goes hand in hand a little bit on finding diverse talent for the organization and partnering with ERGs or DEI committees. And I'm an ally for a lot of the different groups. And so it's always been a passion of mine to help people have meaningful careers, and organizations that focus on DEI help make that happen.
Thank you so much, Julia. Our third panelist is Ivy Chow, who joins us all the way from sunny, I hope, California. Ivy is a senior legal assistant at Visa. Ivy, would you also do us the honor of sharing a bit about yourself, your work, and what inspired you to get involved in DEI and/or ERGs at Visa?
Sure. Thank you, Shantae, for the introduction. And we do have sunny weather today. So hi, everyone. My name is Ivy Chow. And for our audience, you might be thinking, hey, I have a Visa card. So I have my Visa card here. So you must be thinking Visa is a credit card company or a bank, but that is incorrect. Visa is a network of networks. that connects the payment ecosystem and allow us to build trust. That connection, bringing everything and gives us our purpose, uplift everyone everywhere, and be the best way to pay and be paid. So for my day job, I'm a senior legal assistant in the global litigation and competition team, and I manage third-party subpoena and tax production. At Visa, everyone is a leader. So with more than 26,500 members across the globe, Visa has 11 ERGs to drive inclusion and diversity. As a Navy veteran, I was drawn to join Visa military. We call ourselves MERG. Since I started at Visa 7 years ago, I was drawn because I just found it was so amazing to share that experience with others in the company and connect with other veterans. And then I also was recruited in 2018 to be the co-chair for MERG steering committee. And in 2021, I was also recruited to join legal ethics and compliance, inclusion and diversity committee. So with my military and legal professional background, it's hard not to provide support when asked. Back to you, Shantae.
Thank you, Ivy. Now, our fourth and final panelist is Orion's very own Mike Wooster, who was the Vice President of Recruiting at Orion Talent and one of my strongest advocate and partners here at the organization. He has been that strong advocate, partnering with me and my team as we work to build ERGs here at Orion. I am so glad he could attend and share what he's learned and experienced in our journey. Mike, thank you for joining. And would you also share a bit about yourself, your work, and what inspired you to get involved in DEI and/or ERGs at Orion Talent?
Sounds good. Thanks, Shantae. And first, let me just say it's great to be here with Carissa, Julia, and Ivy. All three of you know more about ERGs and DEI than I do. So I'm learning from all of you, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. So a little bit about myself. I joined the Navy back in 1997, served for about 8 years active duty, re-enlisted on 9/11 in the Middle East, 2001, and then decided to get out after 8 years and separated. Joined Orion in 2005, so I've been here for about 18 years, which is amazing when I say it because I doesn't feel like 18 years. It feels like a year. It feels like I've been here for such a short period of time. But I've had the honor of helping veterans, primarily veterans, find meaningful employment in corporate America, and it's just been a great run. And then I think the second part is you wanted to know like why DEI is important to us. And so I thought about this and there's like 10 or 12 reasons I could give you, tons of reasons. So I figured I'd give you two quick ones. First, from a professional standpoint, I've seen with my own eyes what happens when you don't have diverse opinions in the workforce, when you don't listen to everybody's opinions and you kind of pigeonhole yourself to just one group of people's thought process. You get groupthink and the organization itself is weaker because of it. And then everybody that doesn't have a voice in the room, they don't get the benefit of having that voice. So that's a professional thing that I've noticed that's important to me to correct. And then the second thing, personal story, because I think DEI for all of us means something personal to us. So I'll give you a quick story. My grandfather, my dad's dad, died in 1949 when my dad was 9 months old. And he had 3 siblings. So there was 4, himself and his 3 siblings. And my grandmother then had 4 children to raise, one of them 9 months old, which was my dad, all the way up to a 14-year-old, which was his oldest brother. So she's a single mother at that point that has 4 kids in 1949. And then a week later, her dad dies. So she's left to support a 5-person family, herself and her 4 kids. And she does it all by herself for all those years. And she works so hard that she becomes one of the highest paid people in the, or one of the highest paid females in the state of Colorado, which was where my family's from. But even though she was one of the highest paid females, she was a lead nurse for the state. And she was nowhere even in the top, like 35% of the highest paid people in the state. She worked to get herself to one of the highest positions she could, but she didn't actually earn the money that people that were doing half as much with a third of the responsibility were earning. So for me personally, giving everybody a voice, everybody being represented and everybody having an equal chance is why DEI is so important to me. Back to you, Shantae.
Wow, thanks, Mike, for that personal story. That is really touching, and it definitely speaks volumes as to why we're here today. Like I said, we have a rock star group of panelists, and we have so much to talk about in such a limited amount of time. But before we dive in, sorry. Let me explain how you, audience, can participate. First, if you have a question, you do not have to wait till our Q&A time at the end of the panel discussion. You can add your questions to the chat at any time. Our team will monitor and let me know when we have questions for the audience to dig into, from the audience to dig into. If we don't get it right away, we will add it to our Q&A section at the end for sure. So ask away when your question comes to mind. In addition, this is going to be a bit of an interactive session. We have added a couple of poll questions for you out there in the audience. Participation is simple. You just need to use the tools right on your Zoom screen when the poll questions pop up. And with that, we are ready to start. So I want to begin today's discussion by defining what an employee resource group, or ERG, is, so that we have a shared understanding of what we are discussing today. This definition you see is from Gartner, and I think it does a pretty amazing job summarizing what we want to achieve as people and culture leaders building these groups. An employee resource group is voluntary and employee-led diversity and inclusion initiative that is formally supported by an organization. ERGs are generally organized on the basis of common identities, interests, or backgrounds, and with the goal of supporting employees, providing opportunities to network and create a more inclusive workplace. The definition, to me, does a great job of hitting on the markers of ERGs, what we also know as affinity groups, such as the fact that they are voluntary and that they are employee-led and they are formally supported by by the business. Is there anything else that the panel would like to add to that definition or statement? Okay, great. Now that we have a shared understanding, let's have a moment of trivia fun to see what our audience knows about the history of ERGs. Don't worry, I didn't know this until I looked it up, so I was able to cheat just a bit. When and where was the first ERG formed in the US? 1962, 1970, 1980, or 1990? You have a couple seconds, so be quick to click. Wow, I have 28, 55% said 1970 at Xerox. And I had 10%, yeah, so seems like we got a pretty smart crowd here. What is that? So I will have to say either someone was cheating or people are just genuinely know their history. The first ERG was at Xerox in 1970, and it was the National Black Employee Caucus, founded with the support of the CEO of Xerox and led to the formation of other groups. I think a lot of us would be forgiven for thinking ERGs were formed later in recent years. Personally, with all the talk that's going on now, I would have thought it'd be a little more recent. And I want, I'm sorry, and I want to engage the panel and ask my first question. And since Julie has been so helpful, I will ask her the first question. Julia, why do you believe that ERGs are important resources to have inside a business?
Oh, that why is so critical, and it's different for every business. So each organization really is going to have to answer that why, right? And figure out what's important for their business. When I think about the journey that CommScope went on, I talked about two big companies coming together. Legacy CommScope didn't have ERGs. Eris, the company that we acquired, had a very active ERG community with veterans, young careers, women's, and I think one or two other groups. And when we talked and looked at our global footprint, because diversity looks different here in the States than it does in other countries, and we're a company of 30,000+ employees, wow, and I think it's over 160 different countries. Wow. So we've got a pretty vast footprint. And so we decided as an organization to create a diversity business network as opposed to individual ERGs. The only nuance to that is our young careers group we've kept active as an offshoot of the business network. But for us, it wasn't about the what I like to call feel-good diversity efforts, but really trying to focus and figure out how diversity can help the company and our workforce together. And that's why we decided to do more of a business network. We had people that were really hungry for connection and community, and DEI is an important way to make that possible through ERGs or business networking groups. And they really are the living embodiment of that commitment to keep people connected. And so we did a lot of, we established our DIBN is what we call our network. And it was very unfortunate because we were building this all together. So the acquisitions happened in 2019, 2020, the pandemic happens. We're about to still launch our business network, our diversity business network, and then George Floyd and all of the social unrest happened. So we took a pause because we didn't want to seem tone deaf that we were creating this because of that, when it was a little more about timing. And so we paused the launch of the network until 2021 and then did a more formal launch. We didn't want it to be a knee-jerk reaction. But since the launch, we've really done a lot of learning, collaboration events around unconscious bias. What does allyship look like? Things like that. We've had international events. We've had launched some programs in Mexico, kind of building out that more global nature. And we're starting to really launch a program called Career Connects around mentorship and offering mentorship opportunities. And it's really important to our organization because it keeps us as a business and community open and welcoming to all. It's helping us build a culture that really cares and is invested in our shared success. We're getting better at listening to each other, understanding what colleagues, their different needs, their goals, their struggles, hopes, and ideas to enable a more respectful and effective culture. And I think one of the things that's really important to have success is making sure that you've got that excited and passionate group of people inside of your business who can propel the ERG or business network forward. If you don't have that, it will fade quickly. I've seen that happen in the past. And I think just having that mission and the purpose is really important in establishing any sort of ERG or business network, and looking at that each year to make sure, okay, what steps have you made? Where are you going? How do you fine tune? So our leadership council came together in November to do a big refresh for 2023. And I think doing things like that can really help ERGs and business networks be successful.
Wow, that was a lot, Julia. Thank you so much for that. And as I said before, we looked to you when I came to Orion just a year ago to talk about our goals of launching ERGs, because we wanted to make sure that we had that insight, and you were very valuable to us in that. And as many of my coworkers know, and people who know me, one of my pet peeves is the idea of pop-up DEI, where we saw a lot of organizations with regards to the 2020 unrest around George Floyd be a bit tone deaf and want to have that feel good, when it's not always a feel good journey that we have. And it's something that's often done in a hurry to send a quick message to the marketplace, but not to build something that is meaningful and that lasts and reverberates across the market. And that is why I refer to it as a DEI journey, because once we officially launched our DEI journey for ERGs, the passion from employees and the desire for our ERGs was resounding. And as a result, we've been taking careful steps to make our ERGs legitimate forces of connection, culture, and change for our employees and the business. And with that in mind, I would love to ask Mike Wooster from my Orion family to discuss the journey Orion is on to ERG excellence. And so, Mike, this next question is for you. How and where can businesses get started with ERG development?
All right, thanks, Shantae. This is a great question for me because we literally just lived through this over the past year. So like pretty much everything, the hardest part of it is getting started. So once you get started, it gets easier. And that's one thing I'll say. I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that you're not creating this from scratch. There's companies that have already done it. The panelists on this call, they've already created these things, and those resources and documents and all of the things that they went through are already out there. So the first thing I would always encourage somebody to do when you're starting an ERG or anything with D&I is find people within your own organization that have been in other organizations that have these type of programs, and then reach out to other subject matter experts from other organizations that have already gone down the path before you, so that you're not just creating the wheel from scratch. And so that's what we did here. First and foremost with you, Shantae, you had experience with this from other organizations. So you were our first resource as we just tried to determine how we were going to move forward. You were the first, and then you directed us over to Julia, and Julia had great conversations with us about what she had seen, and she helped us to kind of get ourselves on the right track. And the DEI journey and ERGs aren't going to be the same for every organization. Orion being a few hundred people company, it's going to be a different look than CommScope with 30,000 people. It's a very different thing. So it's not a one size fits all, but you take bits and pieces from what already exists and you create your own version of it that fits what your organization needs. The other thing I'll say is, just like a lot of other things in life, YouTube and the internet are your friend. Go out there and look for resources. They're there. There's no reason to try to come up with it all on your own. And other than that, I mean, those were my best thoughts over the last year. A couple other things I'll say is that I think a lot of people want to get involved in ERGs because they see it as something that requires action and it's going to make change and it's going to be an exciting thing, and it is. But initially, some of it's kind of boring, and you got to do the blocking and tackling and create the process and the structure, and some of it's tedious and some of it's not necessarily that action oriented stuff. So as you're getting a group of people together to initially start these, find people that are motivated by some of the more mundane tasks involved. I kind of like that stuff. So I was a good person to be involved in some of the more boring aspects of the initial phase. And then later on, the fun stuff comes and the more impactful things. And that's kind of where we're at now at Orion. So I think that's the best answer I got for you.
Yeah, Mike, and we appreciate and love you for liking to do the boring stuff. That definitely helped get us across the finish line. And reflecting on your answer, I can recall just how our journey started and how we had a couple of setbacks before we are where we are now. I also love what you said about leveraging our internal and external partners and allies. Also the templates that other businesses have developed. Again, we keep saying Julia, but she was such an immense assistance for us when we got this started. And it wasn't until then that we kind of started seeing the ball moving forward with regards to the processes at Orion. The ideas and the knowledge we gained also made our internal collaboration so rich. Everyone was bringing great insight to the table. I wasn't the only one who had valuable input. And that has been the beauty of our success here. So that was great feedback about the why of ERGs and the tips to getting started. I would love to focus on ERGs in action for our next two panelists questions, but first let's tackle another poll and explore what some of the challenges are when it comes to running successful ERGs. Here is the question. What is the greatest challenge to ERG success in your business? Note, this is multiple choice. Is it getting executive support? Having enough members to keep momentum going? Not having enough funds? Too much of a time commitment? Too many people who want to participate? Or we don't currently have ERGs? You can have multiple choices on here, so I have a couple seconds. So it looks like the majority of our people Having enough members to keep momentum going was 57%. Too much of a time commitment? Oh boy, I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the next couple of questions. That was at 45%. And that was followed up by a tie with getting executive support. And then we don't currently have ERG. So that's this. I mean, both of you guys are in good places to continue to have this conversation today. So, Carissa, you've been active in ERG since you exited the Army more than a decade ago. Can you share what has made the ERGs you lead and participate in effective?
Absolutely happy to do so. I think that's such an important question because effective for me means successful. So with anything that we do, especially in business, we want to be sure that there's goals and we have something that we're measuring ourselves to. And like Julia and Mike were both talking to, you have to be deliberate, almost like a business, right? And having the goals established, pillars, understanding what type of funds that you're going to need, like you just mentioned. And you're right, it's been 12 years now since I've exited active duty, and I jumped right into doing ERGs, and I was very fortunate to be a founding member for the launch of ERGs at a med device company. I was the co-lead for our African American ERG, and for us at that point, we were kind of trying to feel our way through it, but there was a lot of corporate responsibility there. There were goals put in front of us. You talked about like the grunt work that you have to do to putting things together. They did a lot of that for us. We came out of that with a budget, so we had funds and we knew that that could grow with our planning. So if we showed some success, we could get more funds and do more creative things. I think what also made us very effective in that that group specifically was that we understood our scope. We wanted to create a safe space for this community and demographic. Unfortunately, in the area, African Americans weren't greatly a present demographic, but they were in the company because we were a global company. So, and we were trying to bring in talent to the area. And so it was very important for us to have a safe space. People that looked the same, had the same cultural understanding. And as that group grew, we saw our focus shift a bit because we wanted to grow our membership. We felt like we had to be more inclusive. And so we became more of informative. That was more of our approach, teaching about Kwanzaa and different things, Black History Month, that there are people in science that have been very successful in recognizing those types of individuals. Is something we really focused on. So really having that understanding of what we want the group to be, what our purpose is. I've led some other groups, military, of course, very relevant to what we're talking about today and to Orion. And so that was another one that I got involved in as well as a co-lead. And it was more because they were really struggling and they needed the passion that Julia mentioned earlier. They needed someone that was very passionate just about the different things in the community. I know we'll probably get to it later, but usually military type support groups are easy to launch because we're patriotic. We respect our military. So that this one was struggling, they definitely just needed that passion. That can be a strong driver there as well. Kind of shifting in my experience, I'm now at Catalent, and I'm more in a mentor coaching type role. I sponsor our women's network here at the Bloomington site. And then I also do the global steering committee for our military group as well. And what's interesting in that, I get to be closer to the leadership piece of that and seeing how they support ERGs. I'll say it starts at the top for Catalent. We have our executive leadership team sits as a sponsor on all of our committees. So it's really good to see that interaction. We get involved in some really important work of like changing policies. How do we support in the military group? How do we support those that serve in the Reserve, the National Guard? If they have, members that are in the military, how do we support them when they're away? So that's really key, that having that leadership support. And I see it important for myself too. I'm a leader at Catalent, and I think it's good for my team to see me putting my time towards different activities and showing them that ERGs are important. We'll talk more about what they bring to the business, but that's definitely something that is important for the team to see. It's a lot of good work that we're doing, and tying it back to the business needs is always the best approach to making it effective, because we're a business. We have to produce a profit, and if we can tie it back to how this improves quality, how we're reaching to different demographics that we want represented in our business, and then how we're bringing those diverse thoughts to our company and attracting that talent.
Wow. Okay, talk about time commitment, Carissa. You are definitely exceeding your 40.
Yeah.
You just kept going and going. I'm like, how is she on all these committees? It's just insane. But I mean, when you see the impact of it, and you made some really, really good insights into what makes ERG successful, that deliberate, that intentional, the aligning the business goals and the understanding the scope and the safe space, that is beyond important to me, is allowing in all of these ERGs is being intentional and having those safe space so people can come, anybody can come, and we'll cover that a little bit later too, to the ERGs and understand how what they're doing is aligning themselves to the business goals and vice versa. And sometimes when we learn and discover inside our ERGs, can also be shared with leadership. And those can enhance and advance business goals, like you said, in the end, and create and produce that profit in many areas where we're not necessarily a revenue maker. We're definitely on the other end in terms of looking for funding. So thanks a lot, Carissa, for that insight. Now, Ivy, it's your turn for the mic, and here is your question. What is the right balance of inclusion when it comes to ERGs? And what I mean by that is there's always a challenge, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion, of structuring who and should be a part of an ERG. Should everyone be able to join the African American ERG or the LGBTQ ERG or the Women in Business ERG or Affinity Group? Should there be membership requirements? I know that was rapid fire, but can you share your ERG experience? Can you remember all that? And can you share your ERG experience and ideas on the topic?
Sure, I would love to, Shante. So my ERG work started not long after I joined Visa, and I was working on a big data security project. One of my colleagues asked me about my career path and learned that I served in the Navy. He was also a veteran, so somehow he recruited me to join MERG. I'm glad he didn't make me do 100 push-ups when I joined. So I was thrilled about it, and I joined, and I even received our MERG Challenge coin. This is created by our Mergonians, our members. It's awesome. So long story short, I'm now the co-chair for MERG Steering Committee. We are a small and mighty ERG with 240 Mergonians. It's a nickname for our members, spread across 14 offices and telecommuters in the US. We have a few Mergonians in Europe and Asia as well. And recently we also had two firefighters that joined our ERG and law enforcement. So someone who used to be a police officer in Macedonia. So that was super exciting, something that our past career and current careers have in alignment with. So our ERG answer to who to include is easy. It's everyone. And I will give you an example. Like Carissa said, there are some people who have served or who have family members who have served or want to be part of MERG. But there are also people who have great respect for those who have served and want to participate. In DEI, that's called allyship, and allyship is essential to the success of any group. You can't do it alone. So one of our favorite MERG events recently was hosting a trip to visit the USS Hornet, a World War II battleship located in an old naval base in Alameda, California. There were 35 people in our group, made of Mergonians and employees who invited their families and friends to spend a day with us. We had an employee who invited her friend who recently retired from Visa, two newlywed who brought their husband to come, and an employee who also invited her son who recently transitioned out the Navy, so he's going to school now, and another employee who brought her parents and grandparents because she mentioned that her dad built his whole career in the military. So it was so much fun. We had so much allies. So on the trip, we had 6 docents that were retired veterans. So they were in their late 60s and 70s. And we heard their stories and got some insight on the history of the USS Hornet and the part she played during World War II and the veteran stories of service. So everyone had a great time, and we also had boxed lunches. What better way to create connection and understanding, which is fundamental to ERG success, like Carissa and Julia have both said. So at Visa, we definitely um, tend towards more inclusion and making event accessible to all and reaching out to allies and supporters in every way that we can. Visa is a company committed to diversity and inclusion, and we built a workforce full of people with all kinds of background and experience. There are tons of intersectionality across the different ERGs as well. That's another way we can build support and create awareness by leveraging other ERGs. I think one thing we must think about with ERG is burnout when it comes to the leaders who are driving these group and leading this event. That's a lot to balance. So it's just something we are talking a lot about. How do you keep ERGs living and active and engaged while respecting that people have busy jobs, families, and lives? Our answer is inclusion. The more members and support, the more workload can be distributed. And that's a big help to some of the biggest ERG challenges. And I remember one of our senior director in inclusion and diversity once mentioned, you can invite everybody to the party, but you can't make everybody dance. So back to you, Shantae.
Thanks, Ivy. That's great. And I really appreciate that beautiful message of inclusion and that example of why bringing more people in leads to the understanding and shared experiences. I chuckle because I know that Visa is huge. And I think I read somewhere that you had 240 is small. And in Orion's definition, I'm like, oh my God, we're like 240 organization, a little over. So I was a bit jealous that you guys have definitely a much larger, smaller organization or ERG. But I will also say there's nothing better than to bring people around together around food, knowledge, and purpose. And so I really do value that because I think that that's what brings people together in a huge way. So that being said, one of the last questions I would like to ask today is, how can we help people balance work and ERG participation? I'd like to open this up to the panel as a whole to see who has additional input beyond the questions that were specific to them. So let's see, let's start with Ivy. In your own words, Ivy, how can you help people balance work and ERG participation?
Sure. So in some companies, they do pay people to serve on the leadership role for ERGs and basically to recognize the importance of that work. If a company have those means, that's great. It's a great way to underscore the importance of the business put in the work and to reward the extra efforts ERG's leaders are making. At Visa, currently it's volunteer. So this year, Visa had everyone include at least one DEI leadership goal and one social impact. And the funniest thing is my department is kind of competitive. We have amazing female general counsel, and she's like, for our department, we're going to have 2 DEI goal and 2 social impact goal. So for Merck, it's a very tight-knit community, and we basically give the Mergonians a challenge coin, and then we just ask our members to share stories of service and join some of the events when they can. And if they have like military and veteran charitable causes that they want to support, to share that with us. So it's just a great way to invite whoever want to help us and give them support as well.
Awesome. Carissa, what other ideas do you have for helping employees be active members, but also balance their work without being overwhelmed?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. We're a manufacturing site. We're contract manufacturing for critical pharmaceuticals that save people's lives daily. So any time away from that work, it better be well used. It really comes down to accessibility. And I kind of look at it different of, more of how do we get people at the site engaged in what we're doing. And we've had a lot of success with providing multiple options throughout the day. We're a 24/7 facility. So we have weekend shifts. We try to do like one in the PM, maybe one in the AM. For example, for weekends, I'm working on one currently to get local National Guard leadership here on site on the weekend to talk to our leaders about what it means for their employees to serve in the National Guard, so they can better support them and knowing what their time away means. Also scheduling at the beginning or ending of their shift. We do the paid volunteer hours, kind of a little different than what Ivy was mentioning, but that's also something for out in the community. They get paid for that time. I think too, just getting people knowing that it's okay to participate. Like right now, I'm at work, but I think this is important work. My boss supports me in this. Showing them that I'm participating, you can participate, I think goes a long way as well.
Wow. Thanks for that one, Carissa. Mike, I know ERGs are just starting at Orion, but any thoughts about the time and work balance challenge? I almost say that tongue in cheek, having a feeling I know what you're going to say, but can you share any thoughts about that?
Well, first thing I'm going to say is both Ivy and Carissa said that there might be some money coming to people. So you owe me some money.
How can I get that, right?
So just kidding. I think, first of all, knowing that there's going to be a huge time commitment, just knowing that going into this, when you form ERGs, that's half the battle. So you know it. And then in the poll that we just did, it looked like the majority of people, the largest group, said having enough people to be able to run them was one of their concerns. And I think that that's valid, because if you don't have enough people, the work becomes overwhelming for all the people that are involved. So having enough participation that you can spread load all the work and all of the different tasks, I think that's a key thing. And then just making meetings and what you're going to do accessible. So we have people across all the time zones in the US. We've got to make our meetings accessible to people on both the East and the West Coast, being flexible around that. And then also having enough people allows you to have people miss meetings if they need to, because you have other people that can fill in the gap for them. So I think key things are being flexible, knowing that it's going to be a time commitment, and then also just realizing that some people are going to miss certain things, and that's okay. That not everybody has to participate in every single function or every single part of it. You can, as long as you have enough people, you can spread load it a little bit.
Right. I agree with you 100%, Mike. And that military efficiency is strong here at Orion Talent, and will be an asset as we grow our ERG program for sure. As I reflect on our journey, it has been a true roller coaster ride. As you recall, people opting in and out, not realizing the lift of participating and the time commitment. I think, Mike, you and I both were ready to throw in the towel. At least I know I was. I was like, what am I getting myself into? We lost leads, we lost members. And in full transparency, I asked myself, what have I committed to? So we will truly have, it is important that people understand that time commitment, and even being remote first as an organization. And that's who we are. It's not, we don't have individuals necessarily gathering at all of our locations. And so that is a bit of a challenge, but it's being, like you said, flexible, and being transparent up front to all of those who raise their hand, that the first part of it is going to be somewhat boring and a heavy lift, but once it gets going, to be able to look back on the fruits of your labor is going to be pretty phenomenal. So that being said, Julia, any thoughts on the time factor?
Yes. I mentioned our network leadership team got together in November to kind of figure out, right, evaluate what's working and what's not. The time commitment was really challenging for us in the initial portion. Our leadership committee was about 14 people globally. We all were segmented. We had 2 co-chairs and then committee heads, a programming committee. We created an ambassador role. So we've got general membership, then we have ambassadors, which are a little bit of a step up where they help bring the things to life at different locations. And then you've got our leadership council. And so we this year created a membership committee, which I'm one of the co-chairs for. But one of the things that we had was like, our committees were made up of just the leadership council, and we saw there was some burnout there and way too much work for the group of 14. And so we said, why aren't we getting ambassadors involved or even general members involved in committees? Because that gives them exposure to other leaders and things like that. My membership role is to help define some of that. So what are the different roles and how can you participate in our business network? So as a general member, we're creating some events that are open to all general members, like all employees globally. But then we do have some exclusive events for those people that are formal members of the DIBN. So we're trying to segment that way, but I love the aspect of what's the time commitment of each role so that you can, so I'm going to be creating content. That's what I'm going to be doing in the next month or so around like the membership and the value proposition. But I do think it's also making sure that you've got, and I spoke about it earlier, kind of your mission and your goals aligned, whether you're part of an individual ERG or have a business network like we do. Adrian in the chat, I saw asked a question where like the business was pulling the ERG into some incidents, right? That's not what the ERG is meant for. And so I think that you really need to define what your ERG does and doesn't do. And that kind of like bias investigations really should be done by HR or legal and compliance. And so I think you've got to make sure that you've got leaders that can say, hey, this isn't in our swim lane and people aren't trained to do that, but this is what we do. These are our business goals and things like that. But having a membership committee, I mean, I'm going to be the one that's going to be pushing out notes and info about it to try and get, I'm using my recruiting skills, right? To try and get people engaged and interested in what our business network does.
Thank you, Julia. That's some good stuff there. And it is important that you have some sort of guidelines or bylaws within how you create ERGs to push back on some of those things that doesn't belong in that area. But I will also say, it sounds like you and Carissa are competing for the over 40 hours a week club with all of your time commitments as it relates to ERG. So I'm not sure what to say about you two. Obviously, your passion and commitment to ERGs is definitely showing through. So I want to kind of go over some key takeaways. Here are the lessons we want to leave with you as you consider how to accelerate and improve DEI with ERGs, affinity groups, and diversity committees. Try saying that really quickly 5 times. First, remember that giving business purpose to your ERGs, defining their mission and purpose is essential to their success. Business leaders and potential members want and need to know what they are about. Secondly, remember that you don't have to start from scratch. Like Mike said, it's good to leverage your external or internal knowledge or even use the internet to build or improve your ERG programs. Leverage the work of companies you admire and know to accelerate your ERG journey. Third, remember that ERGs require passion and enthusiasm. Without that, you tend to get burnt out and not truly see the value of what you are creating. I look at the workforce to find out what employees are passionate about and determine what ERGs will succeed. We put it back out there to the employees so that we figured what they bring forward is going to help drive that passion and commitment to whatever specific group that they're involved in. And finally, be inclusive. Like Ivy said, everyone can come to the party and dance. We're not just coming to the party, but we're dancing too. That might sound silly when talking about ERGs, but remember, including those who identify with a group and those who want to learn and serve as allies are essential to the momentum and to achieving the engagement and understanding of any ERG. And with that, it's your turn to post some questions. I saw that there were tons in the chat. What would you like to know from our panel? Megan, I saw there was a lot of questions, but are there any specific questions you'd like to ask the panel now?
Yes, Shantae, I'm trying to figure out the best place to start. We received so many questions, which is great.
So many.
The one question that actually came up a lot, we had several questions about how to measure the effectiveness of ERGs and also the impetus from leadership to do so. So because of the fact that we received several, I'm going to group some of them together. So hopefully you guys follow, but if you need me to repeat anything, I certainly can. So the first one was, what are some ways to show KPIs and metrics to demonstrate that the ERG can add value? Are there any specific metrics that senior leaders are looking to see from the team? And finally, how do you connect ERGs to the company's strategic plan? Now that one's kind of long, so I'll let you guys answer that first before the others.
Yeah, I'm thinking the two ones who can really give us a good answer would be Julia and Carissa, because they definitely touched on that. As Ivy's shaking her head, I'm throwing it out to you guys, Julia, Carissa, whichever one wants to go first.
I can go. We are really on this journey. So having just started, we're looking at some of those metrics and data points, and we're working with our board of directors and our executives to determine some of those metrics. So in North America, I think some of it is looking at the employee, what our employees, what it looks like, the colors of the rainbow, right? And saying, where do we have under representation in certain areas, or what do we need to focus on, and then coming up with those specific metrics, looking at our we're part manufacturing, part technology. And so it's, in manufacturing, you don't see as many women, or we hire a lot of engineers, more difficult to hire female engineers than male engineers at times. So we are looking at the makeup of our organization and figuring out what those metrics are in collaboration with our executive leaders and our board of directors. And then what are we going to put out to the street? So we're figuring a bit of that out, but it's in collaboration with those groups so that we make sure it's tied in with the business strategy. Carissa, do you have anything to add?
I'll just add, recently we do look at our demographics as well, and we know that there's target. I mean, your area is what it is as well, right? So we understand that if one doesn't present itself in the community, it probably won't present itself in the site, but it should be balanced. So I look at that just as a leader myself, but then we have some recruitment goals that we tie to, as well as, I know it might seem kind of loose, but we do measure participation at our events, because we want to see that people are engaged. So if people are coming out to these events, though it may be a little outside of their hours, there's some impact there. And so people are engaged in the community, which is very important for us. We're not a large community here in Bloomington, so we have to be sure that that voice is strong, and we're sending the message we want to send to the community. And we can see that represented in the participation.
Something to add that I just thought of was, we just added diversity questions, some really specific diversity questions to our company-wide pulse survey. So we will be able to measure. I don't know if we're going to do them just annually or twice a year. We've kind of done a little mixture of both, but we'll be able to measure kind of survey over survey what the sentiment of all of our employees are around our DEI journey. So that's one way that we'll be able to capture some really great data around the sentiment of our employees.
I think that's important. That's a good call out, Julia. Megan.
Yes.
What else do you have for us?
Shantae, you previously mentioned that there were additional considerations when working in a remote environment, and we did receive several questions about that one. So how do you engage employees across multiple locations and in different roles, such as those in a production environment versus those in an office?
Oh, wow. I will take a piece of that, and I'm hoping the other ones can bail me out. With our remote environment, what I found was important, and our journey's been a little different. And I say different because when I say it's employee driven, it is truly like a house on fire, gangbusters, employees in all areas getting involved. And I think regardless of that not being in the office, that is what's helped driven I think the passion is they have brought forward things that they want to do, that they're interested in. And with the support of myself and executive leadership, we rubber stamped it and allowed them to do that. And that's continued to help drive and move that needle forward. So our agility within our organization, I will say, is something that me and Mike celebrate a lot. And that's what's kind of driven our success. And I'd say 90% of our employees are remote, and we have individuals who are in the East Coast and on the West Coast, and obviously, and even some in Hawaii who were participating. And so just balancing the tasks within that, within an ERG, and when we were building it, and the group, once it forms as a whole, is what allowed us to continue to be successful in that. So you got to kind of know your leadership support and what they're going to allow to occur. And it doesn't hurt when me and the CEO are 100% on board to help move that forward. And I hope that kind of gives an answer. If there's anyone, Mike, you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. I think a big part of it is that it is very supported by the top down. Sarah and Shantae are supporting this, but the ERGs and what we're establishing it's employee led. They're the ones that are saying that they want these groups, so their passion is there, and so their participation and them taking their time to join the meetings or to participate, it's coming from them because they want to do it. So it's not forced. This is going to be the ERG. This is the group that the company wants. This is what the employees want. This is what they've asked for. So getting people to want to participate is a lot easier since it's them that wanted it in the first place. And that would be my add to that.
Anybody else?
I was just going to add, manufacturing. Someone brought that up, and I saw that in the chat. Warehouse. That's one of my areas. Lunch and learns. I've had a lot of success with that. In that you do it over a lunch break. And what's nice when there's several lunch breaks, you can kind of keep it going for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. But you get a couple people. You set up like tables in a very heavily trafficked area so that people can stop by and hear what you're about, and you can tell them about your upcoming events. And I think COVID kind of taught us a lot of things too. We do a lot of short videos, and then we have discussion panels. Just a lot of those types of tools have come out and been very successful as well.
We record a lot of things as well. So if someone, especially as I mentioned, global organization, and we have people on the floor of manufacturing facilities. So we try and keep things short and sweet where we can, but we also on our intranet site will post content there so that people have access to it for a month or two. And then they can view it and listen and participate on their time. But we try and do things. Sometimes we do more than one session of an event so that we can follow the globe. I think about your personas. What are your different audiences? So we deliver things a little differently to our manufacturing environment than we do to our, more salaried employees. And so we do think about things a little differently that way.
Awesome. Thank you. Megan, I know we're tight on time. Do we have time for one last question?
Yeah, let's do one last one. So one question was raised from an audience member who experienced this challenge that they're asking, how can we encourage boldness to join and create ERGs for groups that are under public attack and or scrutiny if there may be fear of identifying with that group for fear of lost opportunities? Kind of a tough one. I'm not sure anyone else.
Let's not all raise our hands at once.
I'll just offer finding allies. I've been a part of pride groups, and that's not something that's not my demographic, but I got tired of seeing people standing up and like having to come out every single time when they talked about their ERG. And I offered to do it because I didn't feel like that was something that they should have to experience every time. If you can find those allies that kind of act as like a support for you, a security blanket, I think that definitely can help.
Thank you so much, Carissa. And with that is all the time we have. Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and especially this incredible panel, Julia, Ivy, Carissa, and Mike. It's been an honor to be on this stage with you all talking about ERG, something we're also passionate about. We will be sure to keep you informed of the next event that we have at Orion Talent Webinar Series. But I also want to say that there were a lot of questions around the tactics and how to keep ERGs engaging and interactive. And we will be writing an upcoming blog post that will address these, and we will share this with all attendees. So don't fret, we haven't forgotten about you. So thanks everyone, and have a great afternoon. And I hope to see you all again soon in the very near future. Have a good one.